Hello, my name is Sheila and I would like to welcome you to my podcast All About You. I love to listen to podcasts and especially conversations with famous people. However, I think everyone has a story to tell. Maybe a place you have visited, a hobby you enjoy, or anything that you feel would be of interest. I want to have conversations with lots of different people and hear their stories. So if you have a story to tell, please contact me on my email, allaboutyoupodcast@yahoo.com. This morning, I'm sitting here ready for another podcast for All About You with Adie. Now, Adie lives in London, but he's currently over in Valencia for the Christmas and New Year holidays. So, Adie, welcome to All About You podcast.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm delighted to be here.
Oh, well, I'm happy to have you. So, today you're going to be talking about film and cinema.
I am. I'd hate to present myself as too much of an expert, but I'm an enthusiast and I spent some time in the industry, so I'm happy to discuss and talk about movies all day long.
Right, perfect. So, where did your love of film and cinema begin then?
I suppose probably early days with my parents is where my father would always take me to the cinema if my mum was having some sort of Tupperware party.
Now you're putting a bit of an age stamp on you now.
Oh,
you're
yes.
Going back to the original Tupperware
There'll
party.
be plenty of those during this podcast. So he would take me to movies. Strangely enough, not to kids' films. He would take me to what he wanted to see. So it would be things like the James Bond movies or Ice Station Zebra or Marooned, which is a spacey Gregory Peck movie. And it was, so he would take me, and I always enjoyed going out to the cinema with him. And 2001 A Space Odyssey, which I'm bemused at what the child me thought of that at the time. But I always loved space. I think all boys loved space in the late 60s and early 70s. So he would take me to anything science fiction-y. On the other side, my mother, she would always sit up late with me and watch old movies in old 3-channel television. So we'd watch old Marx Brothers or Bob Hope or Abbott and Costello films. So I've always had from an early years, always associated films with good times and enjoying times. And I don't think I really got serious about seeing films probably till the early 80s when VHS came along. I think we probably, like most of the world, bought our first, or rented probably, our first VHS player for Charles and Diana's wedding in 1981. And that was the opportunity to actually sort of re-watch films rather than just watch them when they happened to be on TV. And so this will definitely age the listeners or myself, which is, if you remember, video rental shops, which will sound berserk to anybody younger than a certain age, where there were like libraries and you would go to these shops and you would rent tapes for the night for a few pounds. And what really set me on the path to watching lots of movies is that our local video shop, they had a subscription scheme where I think you paid something like £5 a week, but you could have a film a day. And I absolutely had a film a day. Oh, I would go after school, go in and get either whatever the newest film was or anything. I watched absolutely everything they had. It didn't matter what it was. It would be musicals, horror films, cartoons, science fiction, anything. And I just worked my way through every single thing they had. And I think that's what really got me genuinely interested in films. I mean, everybody likes films. There's not, what's not to like? But actually being interested in them, I think that's what did it. And around that time, so I was probably 16, 17, I'd also start buying books on films or renting or getting from the library. And so I'd actually get interested, and you'd read about these films and you'd think, oh, that sounds good. I wonder if they've got that at the video shop. And so I'd actually start looking for movies to watch and that's part of a self-education process, which makes it sound like it isn't fun. Of course it's fun, but it was actively looking for specific movies to watch and thinking that would be good. Yeah.
Because my own experience, when I was a kid, I remember going to Saturday morning pictures, which was just the best thing ever. And for me, at the time, my mum was working in a cinema.
Oh,
So
wow.
me and all my friends would trot along Saturday morning pictures, didn't cost us a penny. You know, we'd always have some sweets and stuff, and absolutely loved it. And it was so funny when you were talking about renting video machines. My mum also worked for Radio Rentals, which back in the day used to rent. I think they started with washing machines, then they went on to TVs. And then the video recorders came out. And of course, my mum brought home a video recorder and we're like, oh my God. And it was literally a plinky plonk thing. You know, it's almost had like piano keys on it.
Yes,
Nobody
definitely.
could use it. You know, you had all these buttons and everything and it would mangle the tapes. But I don't remember getting films from video shops. I think my mum obviously used to acquire films. And I remember when the first video cameras came out, which was almost the same size as the video recorder, massive, great big box. It had a shoulder strap. And, you know, a couple of my friends who are listening to this podcast will remember my dear friend Chris, when his kids had birthday parties, my mum would come up with these huge battery packed over the shoulder strap thingies and record the birthday party of the kids. And as people walked in, we were standing there with this video camera kit. And of course, everyone's like, no. So you bringing back those memories of Saturday morning pictures for me, renting the video machines. It's just amazing. I never really got into like renting video films and stuff. That wasn't really a big thing for me, but...
No, it was. I think it was an opportunity, like I say, to rewatch films. I think even I'm not old enough to know. You know, before video, being a film buff was a real dedicated hobby because you'd have to go and find repertory cinemas, and there were probably only places like London and the big cities where you could really do that. And I think probably Paris now, even London now, hardly has any repertory cinemas. Paris now, you can still go and see lots of old films.
Yeah.
But that opportunity, and record something off the TV and watch it again and again and learn these movies off by heart. You know, I must have watched Some Like It Hot every week.
Oh, really?
For years.
My God.
It's just an amazing way to do it. And then, and Saturday morning pictures. I'm glad you reminded me of that because that was, absolute chaos, you know.
It's like hundreds of kids, you know, the parents used to dump them and I guess go and do the shopping because the big cinemas, you know, every town had like the Gaumont, the Odeon or the ABC. Every town had a picture house.
Yes, and it'd be, all kids, hardly any adults. And you'd get a couple of cartoons, sort of see one of the old, even then they were old, sort of a Flash Gordon serial, one of Children's Film Foundation short film, and then there would be some film that wouldn't be.
That's right, it was the two, wasn't it? You'd have like a mini film before and then you'd have like the big picture.
And it was great. I've got it in my head that it was
oh my God,
sixpence and old money. So
I was lucky I didn't have to pay.
2.5 English pence nowadays. And it would be sort of 9 o'clock till 12:30.
Yeah.
And and you'd get maybe a shilling off your mum and you'd enough to get your sweets as well.
But if you imagine now, you know, if you imagine the standard cinema, which are quite small now because each cinema has like 8 screens or even more. Back in the day, it was a cinema, one screen, one film, fill the place to the brim with kids, no parents, and just let loose.
Oh yeah, no. So all of those grudges that were at school during the week would also, the fights would break out, up in a balcony. I'm amazed nobody got hurt. Or nobody I ever heard of. They probably did.
Yeah.
But it was, I just remember utter chaos.
I mean, do they still have Saturday morning pictures? I think
there are film clubs for and sort of mother and baby type events. I don't think that's probably a health and safety thing. There's probably, but
you'd have to have it patrolled.
Yeah, I think that just leave the kids here and you often do the shopping. And,
absolutely.
And then
it was like a creche, really, wouldn't it? It was like creche for the kids. Kids love the cinema. Mum and dad can go and do whatever they do. And,
So it was, that was amazing. And also, I don't want to make it sound like my parents didn't take me to children's films. They really went out of their way to take me to London to see Bedknobs and Broomsticks.
With Angela Lansbury.
Yes.
Oh, one of my favourite
Yeah, we
actresses.
queued in the rain, I think probably Leicester Square, to see that in London because they were determined to see it on a big screen or whatever. And trips to London when you live in Norfolk is, that really is sort of like going to the big city and doing things. So, so always great memories of movies. And then when I went to college, this was probably about 1983. Well, first day of college, this is in Coventry, they had a film society and the first movie of the term was free. I think it was usually probably 50p or something. And so you're there, you're lonely, you've left home, you've got no friends at the moment. So I see this thing is free and I figure, let's go along to that. And it was in one of the big lecture theatres and they were using the lecture facilities and on a proper big screen. It was actually very good facilities and probably about 250, 300 seats. So it was a big old place. And I had on the blackboard scrawled on there, anyone interested in helping run a poly cinema, as it was called. It's Coventry Polytechnic, it's now a university. When I was there, it was a polytechnic. And I said, anyone who would like to help, come along and see the organisers afterwards. And I said, that they say, if you want to get involved and meet people, do things.
Absolutely.
So I sort of went up afterwards and said, hello, there's that thing that says if you'd like to get involved. And they say, oh, brilliant, it's all yours. And it was being run by a bunch of third years who were desperate to leave it so they could get on with their finals. And as the only volunteer, I ended up running the whole thing. Oh
my God! So they didn't want you just to sort of, do the tickets or something. They wanted someone to do the whole.
Yeah, and so so from the first term had already been planned. They gave me a pile of catalogues from all the movie studios, and you could rent them. It probably still goes on. You rented 35mm films. Yeah. And you booked them. You probably, for the big movies, you had to book them sort of a good 6 months in advance. But the older stuff you could probably get with a month's notice. And they'd arrive the day before, and there'd be a huge pile of reels would arrive at the students'
because they were like in tins, weren't they? These great big tins.
And so I got to organise it, and this was another way of me getting to see all the movies I wanted. And because I was there, because the cinema was the only part of the students' union that made money, they just left me to it. I actually made a profit. So they just say, well, he clearly knows what he's doing. So I used to, and it was 3 movies a week, and I'd used to get one banker that I knew would get a full house. And then it would be something I wanted off my list. So I didn't care.
That's it. If you want to see the films you want to see, just run a cinema. Yes, that's the easiest way to do it.
Exactly it. I'd recommend it to anyone. And so I think my worst one, I don't mind saying, the best films, but the worst money to time ratios, I showed a double bill of The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2, which is about 5 or 6 hours. We had about 8 people turn up for it. But it was brilliant.
So that was an endurance test for cinema goers.
They're fantastic movies, but I think in terms of, like I say, time allocated and the amount of money we paid the poor sod to actually project it versus the number of people who turned up. But it was fantastic to see those on a big screen. And this was my chance to go through my list of to see movies and actually fill those gaps and see things that hadn't even been released on video. So that was a great experience as well. So I did that for my whole time until I did exactly the same thing and handed it over when I left. Early 2000s, I actually got into the industry through a kind of back door because DVD had come out as a new format. This was probably around 2002. And a company I'd previously worked for in computer games they decided to get into the DVD market. And I'd stayed on good terms with them, and they called me up and they said, you liked your films and things, didn't you? I said, yeah. I said, come back and help us do this DVD thing. Yeah, all right, great. And it was fantastic. It was a budget film company who would rent things and sell them at $5.99. And this was mostly when DVDs were all about £20 to buy at the time. And but they did, incredibly well, selling DVD players and the movies. And I eventually, or within a few years, I became the marketing and acquisitions director, which again gave me a really good opportunity to meet lots of people in the industry, find the kind of movies I liked and try and smuggle them into our catalogue. And doing the very, very, what on the surface seemed to be incredibly glamorous stuff, like going to Cannes film markets.
Oh my God.
And going to the American film market in LA, and you'd go and see it. But
of schmoozing then.
What's interesting is that there's very much 2 layers to Cannes in particular. Is the bit you see on TV, which is the red carpets and all the starlets
and all the dresses and everything.
But literally underneath that building where you see all of that happening is where the actual film market is. And it's hundreds of stalls from all over the world of film studio, tiny film studios, film people, film producers, TV companies, all from all over the place, trying to sell their programming to other parts of the world and for other uses. And that's what the real Cannes Film
that's where the
Festival
real work
is.
happens.
And
all the rest is just all the frills and glamour.
It's very much the iceberg. With the tip of the iceberg is the glamorous new movies, and down below is people selling 40-year-old horror films, and and doing these deals for 50 movies for however much money. And that's really sort of like the real level of the movie business, is where deals are done, and that's sort of in great it's all really great, interesting stuff. And a lot of rubbish, of course, but you filter through that and you try to find things that are working. And that was a really, really interesting, great experience to sort of get some experience in the industry. And we got some really high profile stuff as we became quite big in the UK distribution business. And people came to us to try and do some more high profile things. So we, for instance, we did the budget release of a movie called Donnie Darko, which was a really big cult hit at the time. There's that the main song from it, Mad World.
Tears for Fears.
Yes, there was a cover version of that. And I think that was a Christmas #1 in its year.
Quite possibly.
So that was one we got involved with. We did special editions of some old movies, like The Who's Tommy. We got involved with the Who's management. Quite a funny story is we were giving it quadraphonic sound on DVD for the first time, and we actually went to I think it was Pinewood Studios, because they had the only still working quadraphonic mixing desk in the UK, but we couldn't get it to sync up with the movie. We had the original tapes, but they were just keeping out of sync. And this old guy walks by and he says, "You having trouble?" I said, "Yeah, we can't get it synced up." He said, "Oh, yeah, that happened on the original as well." And this guy had actually worked on the original movie of Tommy, and he gave us the fix for how to fix. I think he stuck a pencil in the tapes
some
to stretch
minor thing,
them out and actually make them and put them in sync with the movie.
It's funny you should talk about The Who, because when I was at secondary school near Portsmouth, they were filming The Who. And some of the kids, the older kids, like in sixth form from my school, went to be extras for that film. I mean, I've seen the film. I don't understand all of it. It's a bit too way out there for me. But it's like, I've got to watch the film because, one of my friend's brother from school was in the film.
Oh, excellent.
Don't remember seeing him in the crowd scene, but yeah.
Yeah, we'd usually get, we'd try and always get the talent along to a launch event. So Ken Russell came along to an event for that to help us promote it. Ken Russell did The Boyfriend, didn't he? He did, yes. And that was filmed in just outside Portsmouth in a town called Southsea. Twiggy was in the film. She was.
And we watched it being filmed, her walking past, I can't think what the name of the theatre. It's still there. I'm not sure whether it is used as a cinema or as a theatre now. Yeah, and I remember that oh my God, the memory's coming back here, Adie. This is such a trip down memory lane.
Well, Ken Russell obviously had a thing for Portsmouth.
I don't know, but yeah.
Seems more than coincidence to me. But so we had that, and we did a special edition of Scum, and Ray Winston came along.
Oh, I remember seeing Scum. I remember a scene where they put snooker balls in a sock and did this. Oh my God.
For listeners at home, don't try this at home.
Yeah, don't try this at home. No, that was a bit violent, that film, for me.
Yes, it was. Yeah, and we actually had, as the special edition, we had the original BBC play that was never broadcast. So we released that for the first time.
And the BBC didn't broadcast it because of the content.
Too nasty, even though it had been made. You'd think that'd be the sort of thing they'd think.
Yeah, but that, compared to what's out there now, is absolutely crazy.
That was interesting. I think probably the most high-profile thing we got involved with was the Charlize Theron movie, Monster, that she won an Oscar for.
Oh, Charlize Theron, beautiful.
Yes, but not in this film. This was this is one where she played the serial killer.
Right.
And she was very, very made down. Had a make under, I think.
Yeah, make under.
For it. And she actually won the Oscar for that. And we were involved quite early on in that to release the DVD on budget price. So that was really interesting as well. And again, following the production of that, because once you get into that kind of air, is sort of the rarefied atmosphere. You have to do these deals very early on. It's because as like they say, if you can see a bandwagon, it's probably too late. So sometimes it was like that. So that was really that was a really interesting sort of entry into the actual business of it. But it is very much a film business, and that was really, really interesting for me to get involved and also have a chance to release some films myself that I thought deserved release or re-release.
Because back in the day, the UK had a huge film industry. We had Pinewood Studios. All the Carry On films,
yes.
which I was brought up as a kid, which I have been watching on TV. And you still laugh, you know exactly what's going to happen. But what is the film industry like in the UK now? Is it still alive and kicking? Or?
It's still people are still making movies. It's harder and harder. Obviously, at the time we're recording this, we're still in the throes of the COVID pandemic, and so making films is harder than ever. It's still happening. I think for the UK, it's hard to get breakout hits. Those kind of full Monty type movies that do find a global audience is getting harder. And obviously you've got the streaming services now, which is an alternative thing, an alternative way to distribute films. And I think that that's going to be helpful for the film industry everywhere, because nowadays, I love the cinema. I love seeing a movie with an audience. There's actually nothing like it. You get, when you're at home watching a movie, you're always wondering, with the best will in the world, you're worrying about the washing up and you get easy to get distracted. But being in a cinema, you're in a dark room, you've got a massive screen. If you're surrounded with a well-behaved audience, sharing, laughter or tears or horror, anything, that shared experience, you can't beat it. But I think just in terms of actually getting films in front of eyeballs and having people watch them, the new streaming or newish streaming services is fantastic. And I think that you can now watch movies from all over the world that have only just been released. I think it's a tremendous thing in general.
I think from my point of view, we've talked about Saturday morning pictures, and we've both got, great memories of that. Then we've talked about films being available on a video cassette. Then we've gone on to DVD. Now we're on to downloading and home streaming and cable channels where, the films come out so quickly. Where does it go next?
Well, I think this is, we've reached a point where it's now everything available all the time. Though ironically, when you look at the statistics, there's actually less movies available on streaming services than there ever were on VHS. It's actually, and that's one of my concerns, is that when you're watching films on streaming services, they come and go. So a movie that was on the service last month, and you think, oh right, I'll go and watch it now, suddenly disappeared. And I think that's I'm still a great believer in owning your own media. Personally, we still buy DVDs and we still like to own them and have them on the shelf, because I don't trust the streaming services to keep them there forever. And there's still a lot of stuff that isn't available on the services, and a lot of it's the old movies. And I know not everybody loves old movies. I do, but there's a lot of stuff that's not finding its way onto these services. And still, I've watched a lot of movies in my time, but you still discover these movies. We even watched one the other night. Again, at the time of recording this podcast, it's near Christmas, and we watched a movie the other night called Beyond Tomorrow, which is also known as Beyond Christmas. It's on YouTube for anybody who wants to search for it. And it was a great little movie from, I think, 1941, Christmas themed. It's very much like a matter of life and death, with some ghosts affecting things on Earth. And that was a tremendous little movie that I'd never heard of until about a week ago. They're all out there, these films, and you know, to be found and to be enjoyed.
Yeah.
And it's I think that's one of the things that keeps me going, is now not just new films, though there's lots of great new films coming out, but still that there's a lot of catalogue and older movies that I still want to catch up on I don't think I'm ever going to run out. I'm still going through those
No, it
books.
doesn't sound like it. I think for me, as you were saying, going back to the old films, my husband and I, over Christmas, yesterday we watched Meet Me in St. Louis, and I think that was going back to 19... Oh my God, I don't know, but Judy Garland was so young. I mean, I think she was like her early 20s. I'd never seen the film, and I couldn't understand why it was billed as a Christmas film. And we were probably 2/3 of the way through the film before the Christmas bit came in. I'm like, oh, right, okay, I get it now. But for me, these old films, I mean, I remember when I lived at home and I was still at secondary school, Sunday lunch, 3:00, Sunday matinee, black and white, dancing girls, men in suits with the trilby hats and everything. I loved it, absolutely loved it. And I would be the first person going to a small cinema. Okay, we're going to show all the old classics. I haven't seen Casablanca. I haven't seen, what's the Scarlett O'Hara one? Gone with the Wind, never seen it. Love Story, never seen it. So many old classic films I haven't seen, but I would love to go to a cinema and see them. Now, we were very, very lucky. Up in Lincolnshire, there's a cinema called Kinema in the Woods. It's a tiny little cinema. It's basically in the woods in Lincolnshire somewhere. And this cinema, you go in and you pay your money and you get a little paper ticket and you go in. I think there might be 2 or 3 screens. Down the side of where all the chairs are, there's hooks to hang your coat. In one of the cinema, the organ will come out of the floor and he plays his bit. There's usherettes selling back in the day, Kiora Orange, wasn't it? Remember the Kiora on the plastic thing? And in the sort of the entrance to the cinema, they've got the signed photographs of all the stars going back decades.
Oh, wow.
I mean, you could just spend an afternoon there looking at all these signed photographs and their old film posters. If anybody gets the chance, look it up on Google, Kinema in the Woods in Lincolnshire. It is just a magical place. And apparently for Halloween, they often do one of the Halloween films. And, this Kinema is in the middle of the woods. I'm not brave enough to do that, but I would certainly shout out to Kinema in the Woods.
That sounds great.
Another question I've got for you. When you go to the cinema now, here in Valencia where we are, they advertise a cinema in Madrid, and one of the screens in the Madrid, you have basically these sofa things where you put your legs up. You can order a hot pizza, you can have a glass of wine. I've no problem with people sucking a boiled sweet in the cinema. I do not like sitting there with somebody's eating their way through a gallon of popcorn and an even bigger cup of Coke and whatnot. But when they bring smelly hot dogs, slices of pizza and God knows what, I think that's wrong. However, I do confess, going to the cinema in Crawley with my friend Joanna, and we did have a McDonald's hot apple pie in her handbag, which I think we were eating that when we were watching Love Actually, Bridget Jones. She will correct me. Bridget Jones, the first Bridget Jones. I think we bought a drink, but we decided we would take a hot apple pie to eat. So, guilty as charged. So what do you think about people having hot pizza and...
I'm not personally, so long as they're quiet, I'm not really that bothered. It's I know what you mean.
It's the slurping and the rustling and the smell of
the smell.
God.
I'm not so bothered about.
No.
It's if they're quiet. It's not the person who brings their big bag of sweets and they're rustling through the whole film. They should be ejected with no doubt whatsoever. I've never had a really, really bad experience with smelly food, I don't think. It's because it tends to happen at the beginning of a movie and within 10 or 15 minutes they're done.
So once they've eaten it, it calms down and you can...
Yeah, I think optimally it's probably not ideal, but I hate people being noisy and looking at their phones.
Don't get me started on that. When you're trying to watch the film and there's like a plethora of light screens around you.
That's should be punishable. But actually, smelly, I'm not to be. I know what you mean, and I think probably I'm not. If you asked me to go one way or the other, I'd have to say I'm against it. But frankly, compared to noise, I'm prepared to be magnanimous about it.
We've got a lovely little cinema here in Valencia called Babel, and I think it's got like half a dozen screens. And like on a Wednesday afternoon, I think you pay something like €3 for a ticket. And it can be filmed from different countries, different languages, but they're very small cinemas. It's during the day, so it's generally sort of an older age group, and it is just wonderful. It's almost like stepping back in time with the architecture. And I mean, I've been to the cinema and it's been just me, and I just thought there is no way they're going to show the film. And they have, and I'm like, oh my God, this is like having my own private cinema.
Well, we've experienced that during COVID, during the pandemic. Is my wife and I have been in empty cinemas and had them to ourselves, and that was actually fantastic. But we love Babel as well. We go there quite frequently when we can, and they have a really good selection of movies. Our favourite cinema ever is shut a long time ago, but was the Scala Cinema at King's Cross, which is a fantastic place where they'd show 3 or 4 movies a day, only on one screen, and every day, and you could probably go there at random and you'd have seen a great movie. But they showed fantastic old movies in double and triple bills, and it got shut for legal reasons. But it was tremendous. They had a cat that wandered around and had all-nighters on Saturday night. So it's starting at probably 11 or midnight. And it would be all-night carry-on films or all-night horror movies or all-night Vietnam films. It was, it felt like a real club. You'd sort of come out of the cinema at 6 or 7 on Sunday morning and everybody looking bleary-eyed. And sort of, you all felt like you'd had a communal experience.
Well, I remember going to see the very, very first Star Wars back in the day. I've no idea. What was that, early 80s?
77, I think.
77, oh my God. And I fell asleep. It was dark.
Shame on you.
It was warm. I was tired. I fell asleep. Woke up, went, oh, that was a really good film, wasn't it? And I have to say, I'm not science fiction at all, but I do remember falling asleep in the middle of Star Wars. But what should people be looking for now in the world of cinema? Is there some good films? Are there any directors we need to keep an eye on? Any actors we need to keep an eye on?
Well, everybody's different. I mean, I think there are still very good films being made. Personally, I really like foreign movies, which, depending on where you're listening, could mean anything. But I find outside of non-English speaking cinema, I think, especially out in Asia, so Japanese, Korean cinema, I think there's a lot of really interesting and fun. I'm very wary of coming across as being only into foreign movies and silent movies and very serious stuff. But I love carry-on movies and
so have you seen Love Actually this
I
Christmas?
have not.
Oh my God, Adie, you must go home and watch Love Actually. It's a Christmas film. I mean, it's probably quite old now. I mean, I don't know how many. But
don't think about it. It's probably best.
Watching Hugh Grant doing his, his dancing to jump. I mean, it's just a legend, isn't it? But
so there's always lots of stuff. Like I say, I'm never going to run out. I feel like I'm never going to run out of old things to watch. But I would like to think I'm keeping an eye on what's new and the movies I enjoy. We enjoyed 1917 earlier this year. Again, the pandemic sort of makes there's not been a lot of new movies released.
I mean, that's one question. I mean, I haven't been to the cinema at all during the pandemic, and I'm really not sure. I mean, I wasn't actually sure if cinemas were open, but are we going to have a big gap because films haven't been able to be made over the last sort of 9 months? Are we going to find that we're lacking of stuff in cinemas in like a 6 months' time? Or
I don't think so, because there's a lot of stuff that's been held back that was ready to be released, that had already been made. I think the danger for the movie industry or the cinema, specifically cinemas and the theatrical experience, is overcrowding. Once cinemas open again properly worldwide, there is a danger there'll be too much product to watch. And so I think the cinemas are going to have to be careful that they don't put, it'll be a big new release every single week. Yeah. And people can only watch so much. So I think that, I don't think there will be. To actually answer the question, I don't think there'll be a gap once cinemas reopen, because they'll have all of these stored up movies ready to show. And now the production is starting again, that will start filling up the back as well. There'll be a gap. I think the main gap you'll see will be in DVD. But I think it might hasten the end of it as a medium, because even though, as I've said before, I think owning media is the best thing to make sure that you've always got it to hand, is that now it's got very polarised between actually going to the cinema and it appearing on streaming. And I think that's where the industry really wants it, is they want to make a lot more money out of the theatrical cinema experience, and then you're virtually renting it by streaming it, even though they don't call it rental. You're paying your subscription every month, but they're able to control what you watch and also analyse it, which can be really good. Is if they actually use their algorithms really well and they study what you're watching and what you give your thumbs up and your thumbs down, they can actually prod you in the direction of some good movies that you'd like. So it's an interesting time. But I think fundamentally the 90-minute or 100-minute, 2-hour experience is a perfect way to watch a story. A bad book can take you weeks to watch. A bad movie's only a few hours out of your life. I think taking that much time to tell a full story satisfyingly is still the optimal artistic experience. And that's not going to go away anytime soon.
So what are you paying? You live in central London. What are you paying to go to your local Odeon or whatever cinema you go to now for an adult ticket?
London cinemas are, £15?
You're joking.
It's not a cheap way to...
But you see, this is my thing. £15 for you to go to the cinema, and you probably go with a friend, so that's £30. Okay, £30 can obviously get you an awful lot of downloads. Do you think, when we come out of the pandemic, cinemas need to look at the pricing? Because I think £15, okay, I've been out in the UK for quite some time now, and I think when I was going, it was probably $4.90, something like that, so I'm so out of touch. But if you've got mum, dad and 2 kids, that is an extortionate amount of money.
It's not a cheap night out. I think
Then you're going to factor in snacks, the gallon of Coke and the bucket of popcorn.
I agree, but there's a lot of ifs I'm going to say now, is if you go to a cinema and you have a nice big screen, if you have it well projected, and I've been to enough big cinemas where it starts out of focus for the first 5 minutes.
So Eric, the projectionist, is not doing his job.
There isn't nowadays. You go to one of these big multiplexes, there'll be one projectionist, and he'll be flitting around between screens.
Because everything is computerised and all automatic, And
so you'll go... So if you have a good projectionist, if you have good sound, and often it can be rubbish as well, if you've got a well-behaved audience in a nice, clean, well-heated or well-cooled, depending on the time of year, theatre, I'm prepared to say it's worth the money if you have a good experience. But I think to ask you to go into a tiny screen with rubbish sound, out of focus, people rustling their sweet papers next to you, is not worth the money. And I think that's where it will correct itself. So overall, I think it's generally worth the money if you have a good experience. But there's a wide range of experiences you can have between the little squitty screen with bad projection and the fantastic, all singing, all dancing, massive screen, huge audience, if they're well behaved. I'm not sure it's frankly worth the £40 that some of the central London cinemas are thinking of charging.
£40?
I know.
And what do I get for £40? That's just my ticket?
I think that is. I think it's just a nicer seat, probably up at the top and so on. But then you're getting into the notion, you're getting into the plays, the actual theatre.
Well, when you're
pricing.
talking about, absolutely.
And, but I think a good experience at the cinema, again, is unbeatable, compared to, even on big screen TVs that we all have these days. The cinema experience is still the best way of watching a movie and getting lost in it and really escaping for that few hours. I think it's still the best entertainment you can get. It's I would obviously like it to be cheaper, and there are cinema chains that do more of a subscription service whereby you'll pay a certain amount per month and can go and see as many films as you like. I think that's going to become more of a model. That's a good thing because it turns people into regular cinema goers rather than that twice a year treat. is actually keeping up and going, once a month or longer, and that's I think that's a good thing, and I hope it keeps going. I think there's a demand for it. I think people enjoy it. I think people like going out, and I think that even as a group, as you say, it can be expensive for a group of you to go to the cinema, but that going to see a movie and then going to the bar afterwards and talking about it and arguing about what the ending actually meant is still a great way of having an evening out. I've not stopped going. When cinemas opened, we've tried to keep going and have been to odd things. But I'm sure there'll be a demand for it, that once the pandemic's over and we feel safe to go back in big numbers again.
Well, we keep our fingers crossed. Well, Adie, it's been such a trip down memory lane with the Saturday morning cinema and the radio rentals, video recording, and I feel embarrassed with all these classic films I haven't seen. So I think I've got to, get a list off you and get them going. And it's nice to hear that, the information is an insider, talking about the films and, how it's all the selling is done and everything. And also that we will be able to go to the cinema. Films are still, as you say, in post-production, so there is still going to be plenty for us to see out there. And Adie, it's been an absolute brilliant conversation with
I've
you.
Enjoyed
Thank you
it.
so
Thank you
much.
very much for inviting me, and yes, thank you very much indeed.
You are very, very welcome. Thanks, Adie.
Okay, thank you.
I hope you have enjoyed the conversation. Don't forget, if you have a story you would like to tell, please get in touch. My email address is allaboutyoupodcast@yahoo.com, and thank you for listening.